am Hallie Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Hallie Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, veteran White House correspondent, and Time and Newsweek alum Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days our lawmakers too. Before we get started, the Hallie Casser-Jayne Show podcast is always available at HallieCasser-Jayne.com and wherever you most like to listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Hallie Show Quotes. Now, this week on the Hallie Casser-Jayne podcast with Matthew Cooper, it's always darkest before the dawn. And it's getting dark out there in the land of politics. There's a lot to get to, so let's get right to it. It's Hallie and Matt time. Here we go. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Hallie. How are you?
As I told you before we started, I got a boo-boo. But I'm okay. It's like I was going back listening to some shows, and every week I have a new thing. I'm like starting to sound like a Jewish kvetch. I mean, it's just, but it's true. I'm like lately very klutzy. I don't know. Oh, boy. But other than that, everything is fine. And I should ask, and how are you? Everybody wants to know.
I can't complain. We're here. It's a beautiful day in Washington. The weather's crisp and sunny, and it's a lovely fall day here.
So let me tell you, tomorrow is my birthday.
Hey, early happy birthday, Hallie.
Thank you.
That's terrific.
But you know what I miss about my birthday? October 23rd in Virginia was always the last, most perfect peak day of the colors. And it was like inevitably the next day a wind would come through or something. And I don't get to see that. I miss that. That was always like, a rite of passage. So for tomorrow, I want you to go out and look at the beautiful colors and take note.
Right.
Send me a picture.
Absolutely. In your honor, I will do that. Because,
and do it because it's a fun
beautiful
thing to do.
day here. Well, happy pre-birthday.
Well, thank you, sir. So we had a lot to get to. It's getting weird out there. And angry and frustrating, and it's always darkest before the dawn, and I think that's where we are, and that's where I want to start today with you. And I just think that people are at peak, and like, could you bring something home, President Biden? Just something, and maybe we'll feel better. But before you can do that, you got to go to the darkest whatever, and I think that's where we are. I mean, I just think it's just ugly out there. It's ugly between Democrats. It's ugly between Democrats and Republicans. It's just really a mess. What do you think?
Yeah, well, look, the Trump is gone, but the Trump era continues. It's a contentious and difficult time here. When a voting rights bill can't even get debated on the Senate floor because of Republican opposition, we're in a very different place than just 15 years ago when the Congress almost unanimously reaffirmed the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So, it is a difficult time.
But here's what's so interesting to me, Matt. The reason that nothing is getting anywhere, of course, the Republicans are going to obstruct, but you can't get the Democrats to agree either. Let's talk about that dynamic duo of S&M, Sinema and Manchin. I mean, I don't know if it gets worse than it is right now with either of them. Let's just take on Manchin first. I mean, I call them the evil twins now, by the way.
Yeah, I guess I see more of a distinction between them. I mean, Manchin is, I think, a little more upfront about what he wants and doesn't want, and you can disagree with that, whereas I think Sinema is more opaque. I think she remains more of a mystery, and this late in the process, you don't want any mysteries. You just want to get things resolved. But Manchin's insisting on a whole bunch of things, something very close to his original top line for spending on this bill. He wants a work requirement for that child tax credit. It looks like his opposition will kind of wind up removing free community college from the thing. And Sinema, gosh, some reports say she won't countenance any increase in corporate tax rate. So that does a lot of damage to this whole structure they're building. we'll see. I still think everybody's kind of body language so far this week is that, they're going to get there. But, we'll see.
So, first of all, I don't think she is opaque. I think she doesn't want to discuss it with the public, but clearly she's discussing all of this with Biden. And he was hinting last night some of where she is, and I think it slipped out some of where she is as well. But let's just go back 2 steps. We waited to record this morning because both of us wanted to watch the town hall last night. So let's bring that into the conversation because I thought it was remarkable. By the way, curious.
Yeah, tell me how.
Because first of all, he's got a sharp mind. Don't tell me the guy's got problems thinking. He has no problems thinking. The only problems he has thinking is the stutter, which is, comes out in his words, but it's also in his brain. Hello, stuttering. But I thought he was sharp. I think he looks a whole lot better than when he was running because he's put on some weight. Maybe the facelift has relaxed a little bit, I think that happened. But he was amusing. He was so brilliantly candid, I thought. I think he did a really, really good job. And of course, what's trending on Twitter is, they're calling him names. I mean, they're saying that he's an idiot. I have somewhere in my notes here. Well, I'll get to it. I'm sure eventually what they actually called him. But I thought he was terrific, and I thought he had a conversation, with America. Look, here's what I'm trying to do, and here's what I'm up against, and here's what I'm going to do. Now, I know that there were a lot of people who said, Matt, that he should have been harder on, Manchin and whatever. And I just think, they called him Incoherent Joe. I just found the note. But I think that, he has a way of dealing with things and dealing with people. And that's what he has to do. He has to do it his way and stop everybody Monday morning quarterback. We've gotten this far.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. I'm also always struck at how different the questions are from, normal people as opposed to political reporters. They're asking all substantive policy-related questions that affect people's real lives, and reporters are all asking inside baseball process crap. But that said, I basically agree with you. I think he does pretty well in these forums. I think, I've said before, his speaking more slowly, as comes with the age now, serves him better than when he was a younger man and kind of a blowhard and a motor mouth. He's less of a blowhard than he was when he was in his 40s and 50s.
Well, of course.
For those of us old enough to remember,
right,
a generation ago. So I think, I agree. I don't, look, I mean, if you go into that thing thinking he's senile, I suppose you can linger over every pause and decide he's senile, but that's absurd. No, I thought he did pretty well explaining what he's trying to do. I don't think, I think there was a little kerfuffle about whether he had somehow reset America's China policy after 40 years.
Yeah, right.
I don't think that happened, but I think he did fine.
And I think it's important that he did fine. I don't know how many people watch this kind of thing, and I know that this is all part of his, let's get out there and tell you people what's inside the bill.
Right.
And what better place to go than CNN? I don't know how many people listened or not, but it does. It's funny how he did it, and then right away it goes to Twitter. But the more I look at Twitter, the more I understand that Twitter is not the American public at all. It's us. It's the crazy reporter types and what have you, and with a few people who are really into politics. Another story in all of this that I thought was really interesting, and I don't think it was covered, I don't think it was interpreted correctly, was this thing with David Korn. What's the name of his magazine?
Mother Jones.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My brain just went. Reporting hard that Manchin was going to leave the Democratic. I had such a different take on how that whole thing went down and is continuing to percolate in there. But my interpretation is, and of course, Manchin called it BS the second that it came out. And then, not even 24 hours passed, and he said, I think that they were interpreting a conversation that I had saying that if it would make you feel better, President Biden or the Democratic Party, I could become an independent and caucus with the Dems, blah, blah, blah. That was whatever. I don't think that's what happened. I just think David Corn did something very clever. I don't know what he actually knows or what he doesn't know, because that's hard to discern in the kind of reporting that he did. But I think what he was doing, and the moment that he chose to put this out there, was saying, you better put it on the line, Joe Manchin. Are you a Democrat or are you not? And I think it was a forcing of his hand.
Well, I don't know. I've known David Corn a long time, and I don't think he's in the business of trying to, force Manchin to do anything. I'm sure someone told him that Manchin said words to these effect, and he relayed it. And whether that person who told it to Corn gave it its fullest context, I don't know. But I'm sure. I've
seen that. I've seen Mother Jones manipulate before. That wouldn't be the first, by the way. It's as far left as you're going to get. So, you know what? And even if that is not true, that is what happened, and it put Manchin in a really interesting position of having to say, "I'm a Democrat."
Right.
So,
which is why it could have been an orchestrated leak from Manchin rather than. Of Manchin's rather than Mother Jones trying to manipulate an occasion.
That's fine too. But the fact of the matter is, there it is, and I think
but that's different than what you said. But okay.
But you can see. I mean, you can play this out. I mean, that's what you and I do. We take these ideas and we kind of look at them and we roll around and see. And so I'm just saying, it wound up being a really interesting event.
Yeah. Look, he's a Democrat, I think, there used to be a lot like him.
I don't think he could. Let me tell you what, if he tried to run as a Republican and run in a Republican primary, he couldn't do it. So he's kind of stuck being a Democrat in West Virginia right now, too.
He's voted to impeach Trump twice.
Right, exactly.
He's voted for all kinds of, Democratic priorities. He voted to save Obamacare. I mean, he's... No, he can't really survive in that atmosphere over there.
But let me also say this as a former West Virginian. He also, Matt, is not taking care of West Virginians. And let me tell you something about West Virginians. I don't care if they're voting for Trump or they're not voting for Trump. West Virginians like the social aspects of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
They like getting, the perks, and nobody did it better, than the previous senator, Mr. Byrd. And I think I don't understand why some people in the hierarchy of the West Virginia Democratic Party right now are not beating him up about that to force his hand. That's very strange to me, because he really is going against, I mean, the polls show that too, by the way, but even if they didn't, the things that he doesn't want to pass are things that are going to definitely hurt West Virginians.
That is true. But, the West Virginians are such that they're so pro-Republican at this point that doesn't
matter.
Not
Republican, that's not true. They're not pro-Republican, they're pro-Trump. There's a difference.
Okay, well, they're voting for a lot of Republicans at various levels, and so they have no complaints with any of those members of the congressional delegation who opposed things that they need, like Medicare expansion and whatnot, Medicaid expansion. Well, look, I agree. I think there's a lot in this bill that's going to get cut out because of him, and that would have served the people of West Virginia well. But,
So let me ask you a question, just on the technical aspects of all of this stuff, because I'm not up on that the way that I probably should be. But let's just say they get all of this done, right? They get infrastructure and they get Build Back Better. It's not the bill that he wanted, but it has a lot of stuff. But then there's this other stuff that's floating around. And most of the Democrats want to see that stuff somehow passed and moved into legislation. So let's just say they get this thing to the end of October, beginning of November, before the Thanksgiving break. Do they have enough time to come back and get some of this stuff through other means passed? Or is it or is this it? This is
I
their
don't
big
think
shot.
they can get it passed because this is their. It's probably their only shot at reconciliation, and if they try to pass the other things the regular way, they'll get filibustered in the Senate.
They have 2 shots at reconciliation a year, I think, don't they?
Well, they've used 2. They passed the American Rescue Plan earlier this year.
Right, but they're now going into a different time.
Well, this is their second.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah. I think it would be. The short answer is I think it would be quite hard.
So you're thinking this is the big shot.
But that's okay. You come back on it next year in election year and make them,
Yeah, I just, there are certain things that I'd like to see them do that they right now Manchin and what's her name are stopping. And I'm just, are there other ways to do it? I mean, Trump would have put them in illegally. So, I mean, how far is Biden willing to go? And what avenues is he willing to take to get some of this stuff done that he can't get done right now? I also want to talk to you about the war between Manchin and Sanders, because that's kind of interesting, too, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, Sanders made a provocative move by writing an op-ed in
I love it.
The Charleston paper, dissing Manchin, not in personal terms, but, talking about how much better West Virginia would be off with the things that Manchin is opposing, like, free, paid family and medical leave and such a. But, they were genial in public, at least, afterwards. Manchin's a vain guy, even more than most politicians. So a move like that, I'm sure got under his craw.
Oh, boy.
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, earlier this year, Kamala Harris did a media hit in West Virginia to put a little pressure on Manchin, and he got very pissed off about that. So this was entirely foreseeable. At the same time, I think, look, they're all kind of professionals. They're all there serving together for decades at a time. They all know each other. That it gets hot, but it doesn't get, that hot between them.
It's not fatal.
No.
It's not fatal. It's curious to me where all of this leaves Bernie Sanders and his brokering of power. He has far more than I would have thought he would have at this point. If this is the Republican Party, he would have been finished because he lost. But do you know what I'm saying? He keeps coming back, throwing punches.
Yeah, well, look,
like
he's
on that score.
I mean, look, he served himself well. He didn't do a big break with Biden. He didn't,
Right.
He stayed in the process till the end. I mean, he's losing on many, many fronts, but, he's staying with it. He's not.
Well, he's an important voice.
No question. I mean, he's acting like a chairman of the budget committee, which is what he is, and he's not acting like a, socialist independent.
Right. He's playing within the confines.
He's very, he's very much part of the process.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. So I brought up this thing about Twitter, and I just want to say, I have been saying that until they take care of Trump, this country's screwed. And I'm worried. We'll talk about it in a second as to whether they will be. I know what you mean. Right. I mean, that's going to be it. Either you finish Trump off or you don't. And if you don't, then you know what direction this country is moving in. I'm beginning to think the same thing is true of social media. There has to be more regulation. I know that I talked about Facebook last week, but in a different vein, because that's about a personality and him. What's his name who owns it? He's a wackadoodle as far as I'm concerned. I've had his sister on the show, and she could not be nicer, by the way. She's a very sane person compared to her brother. But I'm worried, and particularly with Trump now coming up with this new thing, this new social media site, you have to say to Democrats, do not go to that site. Let them stay there and do their thing within that site. It's interesting where the money came from that, and already people have dropped out after they found out the money was accumulated for the startup. If that nobody knew Trump was part of it. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah.
Why am I not shocked? Yeah,
Well, yeah, right. So so I don't know whether it ever comes to fruition, but I think it's getting dicey with these social media sites. How they're being handled. I think it's kind of dangerous. To me, they're a pimple on our soul at this point. And I'm tired of it. And I'm wondering whether we could ever get back to a new normal, no matter what happens, because of that, of the existence of this locked-in forum situation. Biden wants a vote by next week. Did you hear that?
I knew the deadline they've always been shooting for was the end of the month.
So they had a meeting. There's a meeting going on as we speak between Pelosi, Biden, and Schumer. Schumer of the he's in New York. Everybody else, I guess, in Washington. And I know they're trying to save what's his name in Virginia, and they think that getting something passed. Do you see them? I mean, by the same token, Manchin is saying reconciliation is going to happen anytime soon. What's going on?
Well, look, I think there's a feeling that when you've got something, you want to try to move on it fast before, other problems arise and people fracture and somebody feels like
Right.
they can start making new demands. So, this is a sign like they feel they almost got it. So that's encouraging from their standpoint. There's kind of a conventional wisdom that passing this will help McAuliffe a lot. It can't hurt, but
I don't see it saving it.
I don't see it saving him. I kind of think he's going to win, but
Me too.
I don't know. I wouldn't have said that a week or two ago, but I think the pounding on Youngkin is moving the needle a bit. I don't know. Let's see if they can actually get done by the end of the year.
Let's go to the January 6th committee, and we'll go back to the Youngkin thing, because I think we should talk about that. But I want to talk about the January 6th committee. Oh boy, right? This worries me about as much as anything that's going on. Matt, if they don't pull this off, the Democrats.
Well, you should be happy, right? You wanted them to pursue criminal contempt against.
But no. My issue is this. I still think they're punting. Yeah, I want Bannon in jail, but I think they're punting. They had the option just to arrest the little mother. Just go to the sergeant at arms and say, go to the Capitol Police and arrest this guy. I think that's what they should have done. I think that would have, by the way, bought them some time with Democrats losing their chuckles, their everything, because they're so frustrated with the Democrats' leadership. I think they should have arrested him. That's what I think, and I think they're putting it off on AG Garland, who got all incensed because Biden said, I think that they should, and then they had to. In fact, Biden addressed that last night in the town hall.
Well, he walked it back, yeah.
Yeah, he just said what he felt. So he wasn't telling him to do it. He just said, this is what I think should happen. But even if this is going to take so long. It's going to be the balloon that has the slow leak again. And Democrats need something on all of this. I just think from a PR thing, this is not being handled appropriately. Yeah, they did it. Yeah, they got votes from the Republicans. Okay, all that's great, but that is not enough. It's like you need to let blood. There's no bloodletting here.
Right. Right. No, I know what you're saying. Well, let's see how it plays out.
It can only play out one way. It can either he'll say, and he has to do it in a pretty timely manner, Garland. Yes, no, and then what? And then they sit what's it call it? And they all sit around, and that could go on for months.
Well, let's see if that happens, though. I'm not sure that will go on. I don't know if this is going to take as long to unfold as you think. Let's see. I agree. They didn't go out and frog march him the first day.
They should
after the criminal.
Right. That's what they should. And I'm me. I'm on that Twitter thing, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm talking to all these people all day long, and I am telling you that they are losing, and the polls are showing it. They are losing the trust and the faith of the party. And I know that their theory is that once they get some of this stuff passed, everybody will feel better. No, I think what people really want is for Trump to pay a price. And unless the Democrats make him hold him to the fire, put the feet to the fire on this, I don't think there is a purge. That's what I think.
Well, I know what you're saying. But Bannon was arrested and, convicted on all kinds of fraud charges.
That's not the same thing. They want the leadership of the Democratic Party right now to take action and to show some balls or eggs, as the case may be. That is what is killing Biden right now. People need to see Trump pay a price via Bannon or any other way that they can get him now. It's like what's going on in New York. I mean, how long has this case been in going on? That they haven't brought any charges against him, and now there's a new case. But nobody is doing anything. He's still controlling the airwaves. He's still controlling the Republican. He's still controlling the United States. Trump is in control of the United States, whether he's president or he's not. Everything that is done in this country right now still revolves around that, more or less. Yeah, I love when you do your silence on that.
I don't think he controls everything in the United States.
He controls a lot of the. He controls a lot of the dialogue, the psychological state of the country right now.
There is no question he has
well, I overstated it. Okay, I'll bring it back. Okay, I'll bring it back to you. Look, but you get my point.
I totally get your point. I mean, they should, I'm glad they pursued criminal contempt, and we'll see what happens,
What do you perceive as happening? I mean, you're very laid back today.
I'm not laid back today.
No, you are. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
My usual demeanor. I'm not usually ready to, fire up the guillotine the way you are. Well, look, I just believe it's a process. It's got to play out as to the, cases they're working their way through the courts. Stuff takes time. I'm sure.
In a world that moves in a world that moves much faster than it used to, the issue could be here that the Democrats are on the old time, and the country, and particularly the younger members of this country, are on a new time, and the clock ticks faster the younger you are. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that's a problem.
Right.
And I think that's a problem. But I've said that right along. I think, Dems are, after this round, are going to have to go with much younger leadership and new voices to bring it all home.
Well, yeah, I mean, doing this is not without risk. The Republicans did not slap handcuffs on Eric Holder when he defied a subpoena. In general, we've avoided going down this road of, the full criminalization of defying subpoenas in Congress. Now, I think they should do what they're doing, but it's worth acknowledging that, it's you don't want to be in a situation in 2 years where
it can turn around on you.
Merrick Garland defies a subpoena, and, Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan sends the cops out to go find him. That's not going to be a happy place. Now, that could happen anyway.
Well, what I was going to say to that, my answer to that, or my comment on that, is simply that if a subpoena is issued, that is the law of the land. You respond, and Holder was no more right than Bannon is right. So what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. It is the law of the land. And unless we start imposing some of these laws and holding up to what they say on multiple issues, we are in deep gaga. And that's really what Trump did. Trump made it okay to defy laws. And I'm just simply saying we need to rein this in and say everybody has to answer to the law. Everybody. And it's not a party thing. It's an American thing. And so
I agree for the most part. There are cases of Democrats defying subpoenas that they thought were unlawful, and it just, if they pursue this, I don't think we'll just end with Bannon. I think we'll get into it a tit for tat. Now, it's probably worth it, but it's worth at least acknowledging that.
It's interesting also, isn't Bannon's the only, out of all the subpoenas that were issued, he's the only one who's been defying.
No, I think they're all defying, but he has the least claim. He wasn't in the White House.
Yeah, I mean, the others are talking to.
I mean, Meadows was the chief of staff. He at least has a plausible legal claim.
Right.
But Bannon was just a unemployed grifter.
A dirty unemployed.
You don't get. It was. Who knows when the last time he was in the building was? Probably not recently. So per January 6th.
He is just a creepy kind of guy, isn't he?
I mean,
just on every.
You know what? If. Why? Because he's a thrice divorced, supposedly conservative Catholic whose ex-wife said he hit her and said the kids go to school with too many Jews, and because he's, just a total white nationalist nut job.
I mean, seriously, right?
No, except for that, he's great.
Yeah, I mean, right? He really is an anarchist, though. That's no question in my mind. Listen, Kevin McCarthy, let me go to him, because...
Yeah. There's a genius, yeah.
Calls the subpoena invalid, contradicting himself. I mean, when there's footage out there of him saying one thing and then him suddenly changing his mind, because he got scared.
Well, you remember, this is the guy who talked his way out of being speaker by going on camera and saying we formed the Benghazi committee to get Hillary Clinton. And look how we drove her poll numbers down. I mean, even that was so stupid that they tapped Ryan to be speaker over him.
I mean, it's just really. I mean, it's like Mickey Mouse Club, and yet they are in full charge. So, I don't get it, but I just don't get it. Is there a vaccine for stupid?
I assume he's still going to be speaker.
What do you mean? What do you mean next term?
Yeah, I mean, I think Democrats will lose the House, and the Republicans will stick with him, even though he's kind of a.
Yeah, well, why
popular
fix it?
He's popular in the conference.
It's not broken.
I don't think they're ready to go with Scalise.
Why fix it if it's not broken? Because, this goes back to this whole conversation we have today, which is, Republicans remain incredibly viable, despite the fact that they've got a leader who's an insurrectionist. I mean, just, wow.
Well, he was a non-insurrectionist that day. That didn't last long.
Right.
Oh, you mean
no? I'm talking about Trump. Yeah.
Oh yeah. McCarthy. Remember McCarthy was one of.
Yes, he was the one who came right out.
Insurrection for a day.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I said. That we have that footage of him.
And I see now he's blackballing all the consultants who helped Liz Cheney. Right, like any Republican consultant who helps Liz Cheney's House reelection campaign is going to be boycotted by other Republicans.
Does anybody in your orbit talk about how this gets fixed, this mess we're in? Is that a conversation?
Not really, because nobody has an answer. I mean, I think there was a lot of hope that when Trump left, the fever would break and it would be different. Obviously, that didn't happen. I don't think anybody's got a plan, or that really crushing electoral defeats would eventually change the Republicans and take them off their Trumpian course, but that hasn't happened. So, no.
Right.
You don't hear a lot of talk because nobody's got a good idea for that.
It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad.
Well,
it's sad. I mean, you would think somebody.
I think your best plan is just to govern. I mean, I think it's.
See, I don't agree with that. Well, what did you call it? Say, I like to burn the guillotine. What did you say? Hang the guillotine.
The guillotine. Yeah, well, you're quick to the guillotine. So,
I don't think this is working. I mean, I know that they're going to plod through and they'll get some kind of legislation passed the Democrats and all that jazz, but they're going to lose that.
I just mean, if your question is how do you change the
projection
fucked up political system,
right.
I think part of it is just by, governing and having some success and making things happen. I don't think you.
Well, that's what they're banking on. It's
beyond the Democrats' power to transform the Republicans. So
No, but you could finish them off. And if this were reversed, it would be being played a whole lot differently by the Republicans.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is where they're at.
So,
Yeah.
Jim Banks sent out a letter calling himself a member of the January 6th committee. I mean, that it all they just do what they want to do. They just make up things, and that's that. I mean, I guess that's where we have to leave this for now. COVID, I want to talk to you about this because I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is a little spooky. Did you know that in states in the Northeast, particularly like Vermont, I think, Maine, maybe New Hampshire, I'm not sure about all of them, but I know a couple of them, and a couple of other states where the weather has turned chilly, cold, where the vaccination rates are relatively high, COVID is getting higher and higher and higher.
Because people are indoors more? Is that the
well, the vaccine is only doing so much and can only do whatever. Now, let me tell you the source of this. Initially, with Sean Hannity, who did a 20-minute segment on this. And I went in to find out what numbers. Yeah, Montana, where it's cold, the numbers are going up. It seems to be that the efficacy of the vaccine is only so much.
Well, it's not the efficacy of the vaccine, right? It's the fact that people are going indoors more, and so there's more.
Well, there's more transmission.
There's more transmission.
Right.
It's not that the vaccine lost its power when it got cold.
Well, not everybody is dying, i.e. Colin Powell, who had whatever. But I'm just saying. I'm simply saying
the vaccine doesn't work in cold weather. Or something.
But I was less interested in the efficacy of the vaccine as I was interested in what the Republican conservative talk show people are promoting.
And what
here.
was what
and
was
his point?
Sean Hannity driving at?
He was driving at that the vaccine is full of shit.
Well, he's been vaccinated.
Well, all of Fox News has, and Fox News has a mandate for vaccination. I understand that.
They all have.
And the other guys who've taken over for Rush Limbaugh during the day are really on this.
That the vaccine doesn't work.
There's a story here, folks, and you need to pay attention to this story because the story is that even though you're all vaccinated, COVID is on the rise. So much for the vaccine. You're better off with the monoclonal, blah, 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 blah. I just thought I'd throw it out because it's.
We know that everybody who's going to the hospital practically is unvaccinated. Now,
right.
There are a few cases that broken through that cause hospitalization. But Jesus, I don't think there's any scientific dispute that, if you're vaccinated, you stand a much better chance of not being hospitalized or dying.
It's just fascinating to me.
You
how
might
they
get
play
COVID.
It. Yeah.
But,
how they take a thought and how they put it out into the universe to manipulate.
Oh, they're all a bunch of. None of them are willing to quit Fox and give up their jobs and say this Fox mandate is horrible. I won't work here anymore.
Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're putting out the idea that the vaccine, don't bother with the vaccine, just go for, if you get it, go for the monoclonal, whatever. That's right. The manipulation of their listeners is just something to behold, and it they're not new, so they're. I just don't understand. Back in the day when you and I were growing up, you couldn't do anything. You couldn't even have people sleeping in the same bed. They had to have two separate beds to get past, the kind of restrictions that they had over the airwaves. Somebody's got to do something to clean some of this stuff up. I mean,
stop Fox News from saying these things? Well,
Fox News is on cable, right? So cable, I don't understand. Cable is under the FCC. I'm almost positive. I don't know whether it's considered. They still have to go out over universal airwaves to get out there, right? So they're still using our United States infrastructure.
Well, no. The FCC can't regulate content on cable. They can regulate the utilities, in terms of things like, net neutrality, but they don't have the authorities.
At some point, there has to be some way. If you don't rein in lies, you can never have truth. And right now, there are more lies out there than there are truth.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying, and I know it's against the American way because it's freedom of the. They're not press, so it's not freedom of the press. Does not apply here. That is not the press. That is like reality TV.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I know you do. I know. I just have to say it over and over and over again. At some point, we've got to rein this country in, or we're never going to get it back into some kind of sanity. If you ask me. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is this: all the Republicans are doing is obstructing. That's all they ever do when they're not in power. They're not bringing any legislation. There was a piece in the Washington Post. What's his name wrote it? They talked about it on Morning Joe this morning, and I just wanted to get your opinion on that. How they get away with doing nothing. Because if that were the Democrats, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know why. They're sort of bereft of ideas. They don't really have any policies they're trying to pursue.
No.
Their only real policy under Trump was to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which they failed at. But they're, cut taxes, which they succeeded at. But they don't really have any ideas in terms of health care, national security, or other things that I concern, and certainly nothing they're really clamoring for. Normally an opposition party at least tries to put up some ideas and, force them out into the debate and try to flip votes on them, but that's not really where they're at. They're all into, theatrics about critical race theory and monoclonal antibodies and, Hunter Biden's laptop. And so it's just all kind of, theatrics.
Yeah, well, you can't govern with one party. That's...
No, you can't.
You really can't. So
you can't. I mean, frankly, they're so intellectually and morally bankrupt at the moment that, it's probably better they're not putting up lots of ideas. I mean, lest one of them gets through,
Yeah, no, I hear you on that one. Absolutely. But, it's a little frightening. Let's go back to Virginia for a second, because I don't know whether it's a bellwether state or it's not, and we don't know how this is going to wind up, but I'm leaning towards McAuliffe pulls it off just because he's kind of an incumbent. So that should give him extra points or whatever. But this Youngkin guy is really terrifying, if you ask me, because he's so he's learned how to fit in and play both sides of the coin.
Well, sure. I mean, he's a big private equity guy. He knows how to behave in a boardroom. He's not a nut job, and so he can comport himself well. He's a Harvard MBA. He's not a...
Well, don't put that out there, because that just tells me when he's an idiot. Because anybody who comes out of Harvard or Yale and stays is just...
In any event, I just mean in terms of his demeanor and such.
So what about the story with him and the George Soros remark?
Oh, well, he did one of these, shadowy groups are pushing critical race theory, or, one of those sort of like vaguely...
Anti-Semitic.
Vaguely. I mean, I don't think he meant it as such. I think it's just part of the air they breathe as Republican candidates. But, it's toxic and it's bullshit. And
it's ugly.
He shouldn't do it,
Yeah, it's ugly.
And there's no sign he's personally an anti-Semite at all. But, it's just, it's the crap they're into.
If you play it, you might as well be.
Well, that is true. There's no question about that. Ask Ezra Pound or others. Yeah.
So, I didn't want to just let that one go, because it's
no, I appreciate it.
It's all over the place. That party is playing with anti-Semitism on way too many levels, as is the Democratic Party, but that's station. I'm talking about the gas prices surging. And the only reason I want to talk about it, because we mentioned it last week, I want to bring it up in this respect, because I said last week that the Saudis are playing games. And I do think now that the Saudis are playing games. And last night, Mr. Biden mentioned the Saudis. I think this is coming out of Trump. Trump's buddies with the big boys in Saudi Arabia.
You think it's like a Jared to MBS kind of play here?
Yeah, I do. I think it's their way of... it wouldn't be the first time, the way, so let's not be stunned. But I do think that that's what's going on. I think that they're giving Trump a hard time, Biden a hard time. And they can do it. It's ugly. Now, it's going to be interesting because there's some problems with the Saudis and people now saying that the Saudis are trying to kill them. The guy who killed the Washington Post guy.
Khashoggi, yeah.
Yeah. So there's stuff there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I
mostly.
No, but I am willing to go out on a limb and entertain ideas.
Right. No, I'm teasing.
I just want to say that because I think somebody has to do that, within the realm of trying to be real to it. But I do think that the Saudis are manipulating Biden here, much like the Iranians to Jimmy Carter, and that he doesn't want to take that on right now. Clearly, so I was surprised I was interested that he dropped the name last night. The filibuster, what about him saying the thing about the filibuster, saying that he would entertain it in terms of voters' rights, but the Republicans won't even bring for a vote to the floor after they promised us that but Manchin promised he'd get 10 Republicans, and he didn't, and Manchin needs to be held accountable on that one, too. Talk to me about that, man.
Well, look, just to back up, the filibusters, it's not in the Constitution. It's really a bad thing, I think. The Senate is already weighted towards, low population states. This just makes the Senate even less of a democratic body and basically stalls anything by, in a sense, requiring 60 votes for something to pass. So, the hope is that Manchin would, for his own important voting rights bill, would seek to exempt it from the filibuster, and that Biden, the White House, would be okay with that. I think that can still happen, but we'll see. Biden, 36 years in the Senate, he's not a guy who wants to rip up tradition easily. That's to be admired, but even he sees the need to at least rein in the filibuster, if not eliminate it.
Now he sees where he didn't see it 8 weeks or.
Yeah, well, I think he's
getting realistic. He's seeing how bad things are.
Look, he did get his infrastructure thing with 19 Republicans, including McConnell, so which people said was impossible. So he retains faith that eliminating the filibuster is not necessary, and that it can go back to what it was pretty much McConnell, which was more of a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. Rarely used instead of used every day.
Well, I just think it's interesting that he's changed his tune. And like I said, I think that the one who needs to be held accountable here is Manchin, who said he could get 10 votes out of the Republicans, and he couldn't get one. He couldn't get a half a point. He couldn't get anything. It's just whatever. And I at some point, again, now they don't want to keep beating up on him because they don't want to piss him off so much that they got him on some, deal. But he should be held accountable for that. You say something, prove it, and if you don't, take the hit.
Right.
Something that was interesting to me also was Jackie Comm, who worked at the LA Times, wrote a piece as a journalist that you would appreciate. Did you read the piece?
I don't think I've heard the piece, no.
She really came tumbling down on both siderism and says that we have to understand where we are.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was really courageous of her to put that out there.
Absolutely.
So if if the Democrats can't figure out how to deal with all of this and how to rectify it, in a timely manner, it rests on journalism to really say, wait a second here, we need to approach this from completely different. These are not normal times, and this is not the Republican Party. And when I write Republican today, I put quotes around it.
Right. You have your own terminology for it.
Well, I have many Republicans, blah, blah, blah. But
don't you call it? You call them something, not Republican.
I don't know. I have 1,000 of them, and they come out. I never remember one.
Right. You're right. You got a whole thing going.
One of us has to have a sense of humor, Mr. Stand-up comedy.
Well, I I like to call people what they want to be called. If Nazis want to be called Nazis. I'm not going to call them Nutsies because they're nuts. I'm not going to go, you're a Nazi.
I would. See, there's where we're different. I would, but I'm under the constraints of the Washington Monthly.
In the process of devaluing themselves, then stick with their name. But I see the merit in saying Nazi. Gross.
Can I use that? Can I steal that? I won't give you credit for it. I'll take it as my own.
Nazis.
But the Republicans.
I know it's
the Republicans. They're just But the thing is, I grew up in a Republican household family.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I mean, my dad later in life, he wasn't a diehard, but my grandfather had Eisenhower's picture behind his desk. I can tell you that. And my father definitely was more Republican than he was Democrat, except for Kennedy. He loved Kennedy. But kind
of a Nixon guy. A little bit of a Nixon guy.
Yeah, definitely a Nixon guy.
Reagan guy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Rockefeller guy.
No, but that was for different reasons. It was the anti-Semitism kind of thing. But it was interesting, because that's how I grew up. He had children who were right from the get-go not Republican. He didn't know what to do with that. He was
right. Well, different times.
Different times or whatever. Why was I telling you that about? I lost my train of thought.
I don't know.
Me either.
That you had some Republican DNA.
Yeah. Oh, why I called them? Because my father I am sure, is rolling in his grave at what's going on in that part.
Where's Javits?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's why I said it. So that's why I feel I have to put quotes when I call them Republicans, because there were some great Republicans back in the day. Whether I agree with them on policy, as human beings, they were pretty damn good. That is not what we have today. Therein lies. And they have no policy, as we just discussed. Matt Gaetz? I think Matt Gaetz is going to wind up in the pokey.
Well, yes. He hasn't been charged with anything, so
no, he hasn't. But
before you go to the pokey.
But if you watch his behavior, he's starting to get really freaked out. He was on the floor of the house the other day saying somebody's trying to kill him.
Well, he's fucking nuts, and his little pack with Marjorie Taylor Greene not doing very well.
No, so he's got money problems. He didn't even pay for his law license, so he can't practice law. No great loss to the state of Florida, but even that is there. And he's hired some really super duper Republican lawyers, Matt, like the creme de la creme, which is where all of his money is going, and they just extended, what's his name, his friend who's squawking.
Greenberg. Yeah.
Greenberg. So I think it's coming. If they get nobody, they're going to get him. That's what I think.
Right.
I have to start moving fast.
Right. Yeah. It's like a sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Type case.
Yeah. I mean, it's
not Trump related.
No, but it is.
He's a Trump ally, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not only he's a Trump ally. He's got he's in the cat, and he's.
Right. That's good one. That's good.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take your giggle. I love when you chuckle.
That's good.
Nothing makes me happier that I can make you. Well, I can make you chuckle.
Well, I want to make
it's a good day.
I don't want to be too easy.
If I can get there, I'm a happy camper. Meghan McCain is trying to do a do-over. She's hired some PR people, and she's doing, I left The View because of this, and, rewriting that history, and now she's showing pictures of her daughter, and she's showing up on all sorts of places. I just want to say one thing. Can I say one thing about Meghan McCain? Meghan, you're not your daddy, and you never will be. She offends me. Your friend near a tandem. You want to comment before I go forward?
No. I got nothing for you on
that. Near a tandem? She got herself a pretty good job.
Yeah, no. Staff secretary, very important job in the White House.
The Democrat Republicans love to hate.
Outside the White House.
But the Democrat...
Yeah, so no. They're, I think that's traditionally it's not a big advisory type job. It's a managerial job, but I'm sure she will be all over everything.
They need her there because she's creative. She's very creative. She knows how to push people's buttons, and I think she'll know how to help him push the Republicans' buttons. So I think it was a very good move to bring her in that close. That's what I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it just
makes sense.
It does to me. Couple of things I want to get onto. Did you see the John Heilemann tape that he put together with Ron DeSantis and Trump?
No.
Okay, folks, if you have not seen this, Google it. It is unbelievable that apparently Ron DeSantis has sat in front of a mirror and copycatted every hand movement, arm gesture, signature, speaking like Trump. And Heilemann went back and found the footage and put them together, and it is wild. It is wild.
That's crazy.
It's great. Yeah. So go find it if you haven't seen it. And what's interesting to me, I'm even more pissed off at Ron DeSantis right now than I was. He's got a wife who's effectively dying from breast cancer, and he's out there and he's calling in the legislature for a special session to do something to stop mandates, which is going to kill his wife.
Hey.
Right? This is not pretty stuff. This is when you really gone over the and
I'll check it out.
Yeah, do. Alec Baldwin, I do want to talk about that. Isn't that just a bizarre story?
Yeah, well, we don't really know yet all that happened, so there's a lot to find out, but we know someone's dead. Yeah. Someone's injured after he fired what's reportedly a prop gun, but a prop gun on a set that had a live round in it or something, so...
Too close, because it can be dangerous to fire one of those things, even though it doesn't have the iron of the bullet around the outside of it. But the cinematographer...
Yeah, I just stuff about...
Cinematographer, a young woman, is dead, and the
director of photography on this film.
And it's a Western, which ironically is about a mistake. So...
no, I mean, when you've got a actor who's got such a temper, people are immediately going to wonder, like, well, what did some fight precede this, or was it?
Well, he was crying.
What the hell happened?
He's crying. You can see the footage that he's crying when they're taking the body.
Yeah, well, there's no reason to think he would intentionally do it, but it's not like it's not like Alan Alda shot somebody,
Oh, but it's horrific. It's absolutely, and the irony of it. And so, of course, the Republicans are right out there, pushing on it. And I'm saying to myself, yeah, right. You talk about guns, you hypocrites. Don't you go there.
Yeah.
You have no voice in this conversation on any level. 95-year-old Queen Elizabeth seen walking with the use of a walking stick. They don't call it a cane, in deference to her, and spent the night in the hospital last night. I just want to say that if she crosses over anytime soon, Matt, I don't think the world can handle it. She's like the last bastion of sanity for a lot of people. I think it would be devastating emotionally to the world at this point. Stay in there, Queen.
Yeah, well, it's quite
95.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
95.
95.
But
she was supposed to go up to Ireland, and they put that on, and then, Yeah.
What else do we need to get to before we
are going to end on Chancellor Angela Merkel, who got a standing ovation at one of those things that's going on in Europe. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. She leaves. She was really something. She gave Germany back a little dignity.
Yeah. No, look, a very, impressive run. It's hard to go out that popular and such a long tenure. Right up there with Adenauer's,
The last of a dying
Germany's
breed,
most
my
important
friend. The
prime
last of a dying breed.
Yeah.
God, I hate to be so negative.
No.
Could you give me something positive? I don't want to end so negative.
Well, it's beautiful weather, and it's where it's your birthday season, so get out there.
Okay, my friend, love you.
All right, talk to you soon.
No. See, you're supposed to say love you.
Oh yeah, love you too. Sorry.
Goodbye, Matt.
Talk to you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Hallie Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Hallie Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at HallieCasserJayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Hallie CJ Show. Until next time, this is Hallie Casser-Jayne.